When my client Emily had her first baby, she was determined to exclusively breastfeed. Like a lot of moms, after a couple nights of exhaustion and struggle in the hospital, the nurses offered her formula, and she felt really torn. Would one bottle ruin everything? Would it give her the rest she needed? But she didn't know what else to do. She kind of felt like she was failing already. All these big emotions combined with the exhaustion, she gave in and she gave the bottle. But nobody explained how it could hurt her milk supply. Nobody explained how she could keep her milk supply strong while supplementing. A few weeks later, she was producing less and less breast milk and found herself supplementing more and more. Eventually, breastfeeding faded away completely. Now, with her second baby, she wants a different experience. Her intuition is screaming at her that the way things happened before were not how they were meant to happen. And now she wants to work with her body. She wants to trust her intuition and work with God's design to feed her baby. So she's learning a different approach. As she's been learning about breastfeeding, one thing that was really important to her was knowing how to use formula as a tool instead of it being a horrible thing that made her feel like it was the end of the world. And even though she doesn't want to use formula at all, she wants to know how to use it without ruining her milk supply, just in case she finds herself in that situation. So I taught her the SMART method to formula supplementation, and that's exactly what I'm going to teach you today. I'm Jaimie Zaki IBCLC and Mama 5, and this is the Breastfeeding with Confidence podcast, where pregnant and new mothers learn how to prepare for and overcome breastfeeding challenges without being controlled by stress, fear, and anxiety. Each week, we'll answer your questions, share breastfeeding success stories, and inspire you to shut out the toxic whispers of the world and embrace your God-given intuition to make confident breastfeeding decisions. Let's dive in. Before we get into that, I want to remind you that getting a good latch from the start is the foundation of breastfeeding success. The foundation of building a strong milk supply and not needing formula in the first place is getting a good latch. That's why I have a free Secrets to a First Latch Without Pain class available for you on demand. All you have to do is visit littlebearlactation.com/secrets, and you can get access to this course that teaches you how to sniff out bad advice, how to bust myths about breastfeeding and breastfeeding pain, and I demonstrate my go-to latching tip that I teach every new mom I work with, and I have really seen it change their breastfeeding experience in like 30 seconds. You need to be inside of Secrets to a First Latch Without Pain if you want to set yourself up with a strong foundation, and it's free. It's a no-brainer. Hop in there. Now let's get started talking about this SMART method to supplementing. First, I want to talk about the fact that supplementing with breastfeeding comes with a lot of really big emotions. If you were planning to exclusively breastfeed and find yourself being pressured to use formula, you can feel really confused. A lot of times moms make fear-based decisions instead of informed decisions. They feel like they're working against their instinct. And a lot of times they feel a sense of guilt. And a lot of these emotions come from a place of not knowing, right? I mean, even if I'm going to be completely honest with you, I have never been in the situation where I had to use formula with my babies. I have been in the situation where I heavily considered it. Those situations are never easy. So I don't want to sugarcoat it and say that it's going to be easy and there's not going to be any bad emotions tied into it. But you can feel a lot more confident in your decisions when you have information and you can make informed decisions instead of making decisions from a place of fear. If you have to use formula, there's going to be big emotions with that, even if you know it's the right move, and that's okay. You can have those big emotions. That's normal because you really were designed for breastfeeding and that's really what you want to do. But there are so many things that can work against that, and so many of those things can be outside of your control. So I just want to put that out there that this episode is absolutely not about formula shaming, but it's about informing. It is about making sure that you feel confident making decisions about using formula and that you know that even if you know it's the right decision, there's going to be big emotions and it's not always an easy decision. On that note, it's also really important to know that supplementing with formula does not mean it's the end of breastfeeding. Breastfeeding does not have to be all or nothing. Just because you use some type of supplement for a little while doesn't mean it's even a forever thing. Sometimes it's a temporary tool, sometimes it is a long-term tool. With the right support and information, you can optimize breastfeeding to still have a positive breastfeeding experience, even when you feel like you need to use formula. So let's go ahead and dive into this SMART method without any more chit chat. Okay, so SM. SM stands for supplement method. Now, this is a little bit of a longer section. The rest are kind of quick, easy, and obvious, but this one's a little more because I first want to let you know that you have different options for how you supplement and what you supplement. This episode is titled Formula, but that's because that's where a lot of moms go immediately. They think if they can't breastfeed directly, they immediately have to use formula. A lot of doctors, when they are worried about milk supply or worried about baby's weight gain, they immediately push formula as the solution. You should know that formula is actually the third option for feeding your baby, the fourth, really. So, first, you have direct breastfeeding. For whatever reason, direct breastfeeding isn't working. We need to get baby milk some other way. Okay, so the next option is expressed milk, expressed mother's milk. So that's your milk, hand expressed, pumped, and given via one of the various device options that we're going to talk about in a minute. When that is not an option, the next option is donor milk. So you can have donor milk from a milk bank, you can have private donor milk. There are different options for getting donor milk, but using breast milk is still an option and really should be the next option. Now, unfortunately, not all hospitals make donor milk an option for everybody. Donor milk can be expensive when it's bought through a milk bank, and it can be really hard to find donors for private milk sharing depending on different comfort levels that you have. You might prefer somebody you know personally, or you might prefer somebody who hasn't taken certain medications or doesn't eat certain kinds of foods. Everybody has a different comfort level with private milk sharing. Finally, we do have formula as the last option. Now, maybe this is the first option for you because you don't have access to the other options or don't like the other options. That's fine. These are your options for what you are supplementing with. Next, when we're talking about supplementing method, I want you to think about the vehicle for which we are giving the milk to the baby. Okay, so if it's not coming out of the breast, we've got to feed it to the baby somehow. Most people's brain goes straight to bottle feeding, right? That's the first thing they think, bottle feeding. Well, I want you to know there's other options and you don't have to go straight to bottle feeding. You can use spoon feeding or syringe feeding. This is best for short-term supplementation. A lot of moms like this because it doesn't use artificial nipples. It keeps them close to the feeding and it keeps the volumes small. And especially if we're talking about in those first, couple of days where they really are not taking a whole lot of milk. We don't need to feed them a whole bottle. Feeding a full bottle of formula to a 1-day-old is going to cause a lot of issues because it's going to stretch their tummy. They literally cannot take that much. That's a whole conversation for another time. But spoon and syringe feeding is a really good first option on those first few days. Another great option is a supplemental nursing system. This keeps your baby at the breast. So this is really a popular option for moms who are dealing with chronic low milk supply, IGT, which is insufficient glandular tissue. Situations like this, adoptive moms will frequently use an SNS because they don't have a full milk supply or have no milk supply at all and want to breastfeed their baby. They want that experience of feeding at the breast. And so they basically it's basically a feeding tube, a very, very small feeding tube that the baby latches to the breast, and the feeding tube is kind of in the corner of the baby's mouth. And they use it like a straw. It's connected to a bottle of milk that they kind of use the tube like a straw and get milk through there while they're nursing. This is great in situations where we want to build up mom's milk supply. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. An SNS can be a learning curve. And I've had a lot of clients use SNSs, and a lot of them really hate it in the beginning. Some end up absolutely loving it. Others kind of hate it forever, but it's a temporary tool. So they stick with it because they don't want to use bottles. And then, of course, there is bottle feeding. And if you are bottle feeding, it's really important that you use the right kind of bottle and you use a paced bottle feeding technique. These are things that we talk about inside of my courses in more detail. But right now, I just want you to know those are the different methods. So when we're talking SM, smart supplementing, SM, supplement method, what kind of supplement are you using and how are you feeding it to your baby? Next, we have the A in SMART, and that is the amount. How do you know you're giving your baby the right amount of milk? Well, this is really important to know because you don't want to overfeed. When you overfeed your baby with formula, one, it's just not healthy for them. Two, it actually can decrease the breastfeeding demand, and that can decrease your milk supply. So, if your goal is to keep the baby at breast as much as possible and optimize breastfeeding, we need to make sure we're not overfeeding. So, what does that mean? How do we know how much to give? This is going to be determined based on baby's weight, how much we think they are getting at the breast. So, working with an IBCLC to figure out this right amount is really, really key. If we're talking the first couple days of life, it's very rare that we actually need to supplement with formula in the first couple days of life, like medically necessary. But if you are for whatever reason, you're going to need to use less than if you're supplementing a 3-month old, right? And again, that's also going to depend on how much milk we think they're getting from the breast, what the situation is, and why you're supplementing. So you really do need to be working with an IBCLC in this situation. All right, we are halfway through the word smart, almost to the end. R, reason. Do you understand why you're supplementing in the first place? This is really, really, really important. Do you understand why you are supplementing? Are you supplementing for the right reasons? Now, what are the right reasons? That depends. We go through this in detail in my Avoiding Formula workshop inside of my Latching with Confidence class. There is access to a whole library of breastfeeding resources for navigating unexpected challenges or preventing unexpected challenges. And this is one of the topics we go into in depth. But are you dealing with a low milk supply issue? Is it really a low milk supply issue? Is it just pressure? Are you dealing with a jaundice situation? Is there gestational diabetes? Like, what is the reason that you are being told you need to supplement your baby? If it is for convenience and it is going against your instincts, you need to be following up and getting clarity on why we're supplementing and make sure it's actually the right option. This really is where a lot of those big emotions come into play that we talked about before. Because if you don't understand why you're supplementing, or your instincts are telling you that this is not necessary, but there's a lot of pressure on you from other people saying you're starving your baby because he's crying too much, or he's having a hard time latching and they tell you that this is the answer, but you feel like there's another way, you need to lean into that intuition, lean into kind of exploring that more and figuring out answers that sit right with your intuition. Again, this is where Latching with Confidence is so helpful. It really walks you through all of these situations and kind of helps you game plan. So if you are pregnant and you are preparing to breastfeed and you want to know that you are going into it knowledgeable and that you have a strong foundation, Latching with Confidence is like the thing you need because it will walk you through everything you need to know to get a good latch, to build that strong foundation. And then it will walk you through common challenges and solutions and the questions you need to ask and how to feel comfortable making decisions. It is so important that you are making decisions you feel comfortable with. If your baby's already here and you're having to supplement and you have found this episode, Latching with Confidence is still a really great resource to help you figure out what the heck is going on, especially if you feel like all the advice you have gotten has not added up, it doesn't make sense. This class does a really good job of putting the puzzle pieces together in a way that gets to the root cause of the problem instead of kind of giving a bunch of band-aid fixes. Plus, you also get a month of free video chat support. So you get to join free group calls like twice a month with me where you can actually ask your questions and implement them. So it's not like this one size fits all approach. It's the support that you need to get the answers you need. Moving on to T in SMART. T is for time. When are you going to supplement? When is the best time to use the supplement? Is it before a feed? Is it after a feed? Strategic timing is really, really important. A lot of times I will have moms supplement before a feed, and that surprises a lot of people because a lot of people think like, oh, feed them at the breast, and then if they're still hungry, give them a bottle. But if we give them that little bit that they need before they start breastfeeding, then one, they are not angry when they latch, depending on the reasons that we're supplementing. If we are trying to latch a baby who's really struggling with feeding and having a hard time like getting the milk out and they're super hungry and then they try to latch, they're not going to want to latch well. So if you kind of take that edge of hunger off, they can have a little more patience trying to latch and then they can latch more effectively in some situations. But also, I love it when they start associating that full feeding, that full feeling with the breast. We don't want to, sometimes a baby will feed at the breast, empty the breast, and still be super fussy. And the parents take that as still being hungry. And then we push the bottle, and the baby will take it because it's being kind of forced on them. And they take it, and now we're demanding more milk. And so now we're putting like unrealistic expectations on them. Or now they kind of have unrealistic expectations of how much milk they need. We're kind of overfeeding them. So supplementing after feeding is not bad. I personally tend to trial supplementing before feeding first. That is usually my go-to, but it does depend on the situation. So make sure you understand. Are we doing it before? Are we doing it after? Why? Also, how long are you supplementing for? In the story I told in the beginning about Emily, she just thought it was going to be like one night, one bottle, and then it snowballed and spiraled out of control. You need to have a plan. How long do you plan on supplementing for? When are we going to readdress this and see if we can reduce the supplements? That needs to be part of the conversation. And if whoever is pressuring you to use formula is not making that part of the conversation, run, 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 run to somebody who is. That is a question that you need to make sure you are asking. And if there are not clear answers, you need to get clear answers. That is how you can advocate for yourself and feel more confident in the decisions you're making. I really hope you found this episode helpful and encouraging. I want you to remember that every drop of breast milk is important and that supplementing does not mean you are failing at breastfeeding. But I know that those words also may not bring you the comfort that you need because you're just having big feelings, and that's okay too. This SMART method really does help ensure breastfeeding success, even with supplementation. And if you do find yourself supplementing and you want to breastfeed, please make sure you're working very closely with an IBCLC. Make sure there is follow-up and it is consistent care, not just this one-off, here's some advice and good luck to you. You deserve a tailored plan for your unique situation, and you deserve to feel confident in that plan. If you are pregnant and you want to make sure that you have a plan for getting a good foundation, getting that good start to breastfeeding, getting that good first latch, and learning how to support your milk supply, and even learning things like how do you supplement without ruining breastfeeding, go ahead and visit littlebearlactation.com/latching with confidence. You will get access to the ultimate online breastfeeding class that helps moms like you prevent and overcome breastfeeding challenges without being controlled by fear and anxiety and spiraling down this road of hopelessness, but rather making informed and confident decisions. And if your baby is already here, I believe that class will be so helpful because you can start implementing these foundations. We go back to the basics, we implement this foundation, we learn the questions to ask to make sure you're getting the care you deserve. And then if you need extra support, it's always available. So depending where you are in your breastfeeding journey, Secrets to a First Latch Without Pain is a great start at littlebearlactation.com/secrets. And Latching with Confidence is where you're going to get the meat and potatoes of how to build a successful breastfeeding relationship and create a breastfeeding story that feels positive, where you feel confident, where you feel like you're making decisions in line with your intuition. You're going to join that at littlebearlactation.com/latching with confidence. All right, Mama Bear, that is a wrap for today. If this episode helped you feel a little more confident or a little more prepared for breastfeeding, can I ask you a quick favor? Go ahead and leave me a review. It helps other moms find this podcast and join us in this amazing community of fierce and confident Mama Bears. And hey, if you know a friend who could use some encouragement or real talk about pregnancy, breastfeeding, and all things motherhood, share this episode with her. You've got this, Mama Bear. Trust your instincts, stay fierce, and I'll catch you in the next episode.